Welcome to the deep dive. We're taking that fire hose of information that really defined 2025,
Yeah.
and we're trying to filter it down into what you actually need to know. We're looking at why we keep getting the timeline and, the attribution wrong on so many big topics.
That really is the critical mission here. We're trying to help you extract the pure signal from what you could almost call cognitive noise.
Right.
I mean, this year was just defined by these huge exponential changes in tech, big economic shifts, and some pretty baffling political moves.
So we need to understand why certain ideas, even if they're not quite right, just become these sticky viral truths.
Exactly.
Today we're going deep. We're talking about everything from depopulation, which is a huge one, to the great timeline caveat hanging over the AGI race.
And even a potential infrastructure debt bubble.
All of it is really designed to give you a shortcut to being genuinely well-informed on the biggest shifts this year. Okay, so let's unpack this.
Let's do it.
We're going to start with urban politics, and we're using San Francisco as, I guess, the ultimate case study in how narratives get twisted.
Mm-hmm.
The key observation we saw this year was, well, it was stark. It was basically, if you try to figure out what's happening in a city like SF just from your social media feed,
Good luck.
yeah, the chances of it being fundamentally misleading are, like, greater than 50%. So why does that online narrative get it so consistently wrong?
I think the problem boils down to a fundamental human need for simple causality.
A simple story.
A simple story. When things go wrong, people give politicians way, way too much agency. The social narrative just demands a single person to blame or praise.
Just easier than grappling with these huge converging forces.
So much easier.
So what are those massive forces?
Yeah.
Because they must just overshadow what any one leader can do.
Completely. I mean, you're looking at these once-in-a-generation trends all slamming into one city at the same time. You had the lingering effects of COVID, the emptying of downtown offices from remote work, and then the whole cultural shift around things like defund the police.
So any mayor, it wouldn't matter their politics, they would be struggling.
Immensely. It's like that old story. The king trying to command the tide to go out. Some forces are just too big for one person to control.
But that's where the narrative itself becomes a force, right? If everyone is so obsessed with blaming the individual leader...
Then the narrative starts to shape policy.
Exactly. Through fear or outrage, even if the whole premise is flawed.
It acts as this powerful, low-resolution filter. It's not necessarily right, but it drives engagement. And at the end of the day, it's just easier to share a clip of a mayor than to write a nuanced take on commercial real estate debt.
The simple story wins.
Always.
This failure to attribute cause correctly, it leads us right to our next theme. A massive failure in global forecasting. We're going from too many problems in one city to the problem of too few people globally.
That's right. Depopulation is the big concern now, but for decades, the entire world was terrified of the exact opposite.
Overpopulation.
Overpopulation. You go back to the 60s and 70s, and the Malthusian fear was just dominant. The coolest thing you could be as an environmentalist was someone working to slow population growth.
And this was all based on the idea that we just couldn't produce enough food.
Yeah, that theory was everywhere. You had academic centers like the old Stanford Food Research Institute basically codifying this idea.
But what's so incredible is how powerful that idea remained, even after the evidence changed.
Oh, the idea is immensely sticky. I mean, the evidence was already clear by the late 20th century that rising living standards, better agriculture, global trade, it all fixed the problem.
We were creating abundance faster than we were creating people.
Precisely. But that core idea that more people is bad for the planet, it just persists. It influences personal decisions today about delaying children, even as countries like Japan and the US are facing a depopulation crisis.
And with America, the numbers are kind of deceptive, aren't they? Our population growth is really propped up by immigration.
It is. Which is great for the US, but it doesn't solve the larger global problem of repopulation.
So what have governments tried to do about this?
Well, the standard playbook is financial incentives. Tax credits to encourage people to have more kids.
And how's that working out?
The assessment is pretty brutal. They're generally judged to be 0% effective at changing the long-term trend.
Zero. That's a complete failure. Why?
Because all they do is push the timing of births earlier. They convince people who are already going to have kids to just do it now to get the credit.
And then you get a fall off later.
You get a fall off later. It just goes to show you how hard it is to create incentives for something so fundamental. A little financial nudge doesn't really change the calculus of raising a child.
That failure to forecast or influence human behavior, it brings us right to the biggest forecasting challenge of 2025. the AGI timeline.
A perfect transition. We are just fundamentally bad at predicting these exponential social changes.
So with AGI, artificial general intelligence, did the reality match our expectations this year?
It's this strange duality. On one hand, the actual models, the tech coming out of Google and OpenAI,
Yeah.
it improved faster than a lot of experts thought it would. Stunning progress. But on the other hand, the timelines for true AGI, they're stubbornly similar to where they were at the start of the year.
And that's the oxygen suck, right?
Yeah.
You have people making these radical life plans based on superintelligence arriving in, what, 6 to 18 months?
But they aren't actually running their businesses as if it were imminent.
That gap is huge.
Yeah.
And it's destabilizing.
And this is exactly why the history of self-driving cars is the perfect parallel.
Okay.
Think back to, say, 2015 to 2017. The feeling was that ubiquitous self-driving was right around the corner. Everyone thought full self-driving would be here in 2017, 2018.
I remember that. I think we had a colleague who pre-ordered a Tesla FSD in 2016 thinking he'd get it the next year.
Exactly.
So we weren't entirely wrong on the destination, just
Exactly.
wildly off on the schedule. The thing we thought would happen in 2017 is really just starting to happen now in 2025.
A decade-long delay, and it was because of a profound technical bottleneck.
What was it?
Well, the early attempts were all based on these old methods. Hard-coded C++ rules, trying to predict every single scenario on the road.
It just sounds impossible. Brittle.
It was. The industry literally had to wait for computer science to catch up and fully shift to ML-based systems.
Cool.
So the original vision was directionally correct.
But the timeline caveat is a large caveat.
A very large caveat. It changes everything for how you plan your life or your startup.
And the reality of the rollout today,
Yeah.
it still has that caveat baked in. We're seeing predictions of hundreds of thousands of, what, TA operators?
Teleservice operators. Basically, humans in a loop, remotely helping the cars when they get stuck.
But the user will still call it self-driving.
Of course they will. So the point is, the wacky utopians were probably right about the potential of self-driving in AGI. The tech will work.
But if you based your whole life strategy on an 18-month timeline, that decade-long delay changes the outcome completely.
Dramatic.
Speaking of scaling and cost curves, let's pivot to space. Starlink is going mainstream. Space startups are everywhere. And this all seems to be a function of one thing: cost.
That's 100% right. The boom is a side effect of SpaceX proving reusable rockets. The cost per pound to orbit is dropping like a rock. It's like Moore's law for launch.
Which means all these ideas that were impossible before.
Suddenly become viable. Advanced satellites, space manufacturing, you name it.
And the interesting hot take from people in the industry is that we haven't even seen truly cheap launch yet.
Not even close. They feel like what we have now is cheap. But Starship, if that works, that's the real iPhone moment. It'll make today look like a dial-up modem.
But there's a problem, a competitive friction point.
A big one. Other companies are constantly getting bumped from their launches.
Why?
Because of the demand from SpaceX and Starlink themselves. They are the infrastructure provider and also the biggest customer. They're basically monopolizing their own launch slots.
Okay, let's connect all this infrastructure talk to the biggest money question of the year. Is the AI boom a bubble? I mean, we see massive value creation. Adoption is still pretty small, which suggests it's not a hoax. So if it's not a bubble in that sense, what's the real risk?
The risk isn't the AI tech itself. It's the financing of the infrastructure needed to run it.
Right. As founders, we're taught to be terrified of debt.
And all the prior bad cycles, 1929, the GFC, they were all debt-driven, people taking out loans to buy appreciating equity.
So the worry isn't about AI stock prices, but the debt being used to build the physical foundation.
Precisely. The worry is about the huge amount of debt issuance to finance data center spend,
Sure.
to buy all those graphics cards.
It's like the early 2000s.
Exactly. The internet was not a bubble. But the deployment of all that fiber optic cable, that absolutely was a bubble.
The people who financed the fiber got wiped out.
Totally. But consumers and startups, we benefited hugely from all that cheap infrastructure getting lit up.
So the fear today is that someone, somewhere in the AI stack, is overbuilding or building inefficiently.
And that could cause real public market turmoil. Even if the core AI technology itself keeps succeeding, we could see a lot of churn.
All right, let's pivot to our final major theme of 2025, the political landscape. But first, a quick clarification on remote work.
Yeah, that debate often gets framed wrong. It was always a hot-button issue for startups, for mid-sized companies.
Culture management and all that.
Right. But for the huge companies, the Fortune 500, they were functionally remote anyway. The odds that the 3 people you work most closely with are sitting anywhere near you in a 50,000-person company are basically zero.
So for them, it was just about making the de facto reality official.
That's all it was.
Okay, that clarity lets us focus on the real political dichotomy of the year, this conflict between objective abundance and subjective affordability.
Yeah. Objectively, technology has given us just immense abundance. We have smartphones, cheap clothes, better healthcare, things someone in the 1930s couldn't even dream of.
So we live in an age of objective abundance,
We do.
but almost no one feels that way.
Mm.
Is that the paradox?
Yeah.
We're all richer than a 1930s billionaire in terms of access, but we can't afford a starter home.
That is precisely the gap. People don't feel abundant because stuff used to be cheaper, especially housing. That's the clear and present affordability crisis.
People look back at cheap gas prices, but they forget the trade-offs, like giving up the internet to get them.
It's a very selective memory, and this feeds directly into political strategy. It separates a good campaign message from good governance.
How so?
Affordability is the short-term winning campaign message. It's immediate. Can you go to the movies this weekend?
Right.
Abundance is the long-term good governance message. It's eat your vegetables to live longer. And as humans, we are not always great at prioritizing that long-term view.
So what does this gap mean for the 2026 election cycle?
The prediction is, well, it's a worrying convergence toward populism.
Yeah.
You'll likely see the Democratic Party adopt a really effective populist affordability message.
Which is what?
The idea that bad people make things too expensive, focusing on corporate greed, market manipulation. And this mirrors the Republican populist message.
Which focuses more on external threats, immigration, making the country worse.
Exactly. Both sides are using these simple, externalized explanations for very complex economic problems. And you have to ask if those narratives are dangerously hiding the real facts. So we've covered these massive shifts in 2025. And the theme that just runs through everything is the power of a sticky viral idea.
Right, like the fear of overpopulation or these crazy AGI timelines.
They consistently outpace the slower, harder to see evidence of actual structural change, whether that's rising living standards globally or the technical hurdles that delay self-driving by a decade.
What really stands out to me is how often the correct direction is matched with the wrong timeline.
Yes.
We know AI is powerful, we know launches are getting cheaper, the technology is coming, but the schedule is just fundamentally wrong. And that flawed schedule changes everything for you as an individual or for your startup.
It really does.
So if the rise of debt-fueled AI infrastructure really is like the fiber optic bubble of the early 2000s, where the people financing it got burned while consumers benefited, who today is the consumer benefiting from this massive data center and GPU build-out? And who is unknowingly taking on the risk of being the fiber optic company that loses its assets in the churn? We'll leave that thought for you to explore on your own.